My name is Aaron Delaney. I'm 38, and I manage operations for a logistics company in Charlotte, North Carolina. It was a quiet Thursday, late enough that the street outside our townhouse had gone still. Two stemless glasses sat between us on the kitchen table, one leaving a damp ring on the wood. She shifted in her chair like someone who had practiced the lines in a mirror. I felt calm and alert, the hollow quiet you get after a hard run when the noise in your head falls away. Something in the house had shifted, and I was finally ready to name it. The evening itself held nothing special. I'd finished a throughput report, handled a driver complaint, and tossed my gym bag by the back door. The dishwasher thrummed. A saucepan soaked in the sink from her pasta. Her phone lay face down, the screen dark, a new habit she'd picked up in the last month. Mail sat in a tilted stack, a utility bill, a coupon booklet, nothing urgent. Ordinary pieces, but together they painted a picture I couldn't ignore. Two people sharing space, not a life. I wasn't angry, only steady, almost clinical. For context, we'd been married 6 years, in the same townhouse off Randolph Road, operating the same unspoken division of chores. I handled the cars, the budget, the heavy lifting. She handled the guest lists, the plants, the appointments that kept us moving. Most nights we ate together at that same table. Then I cleaned while she packed her gym bag. We were efficient at routine. The last 3 months had shown me what routine looks like when it has no pulse. Efficient, quiet, and colder than it should be. She looked at me for a long beat, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and said it flatly. I care about you, but I'm not crazy with you. No tremor in her voice. A measured statement. I heard the refrigerator kick on. The clock above the stove read 8:17. I let the words fall and then nodded once. I didn't ask why or since when. I said, "Thank you for being honest." She blinked as if she'd rehearsed every reply except that one. We'd already lived months of small misses. Dinners canceled with late texts, shows watched on separate couches, weekends pushed until the calendar emptied. I'd kept trying to fix things that weren't mine to fix, making reservations, shifting workout times, buying concert tickets. She said she used to love. I told myself devotion would bridge the gap if I was patient enough. Looking back, it only disguised the truth. I was investing alone and calling it us. The language between us had shifted over time. I became you instead of we. Her tablet password changed. The shared calendar stopped syncing. New coworkers' names appeared and vanished in stories I wasn't part of. She began saying she needed her nights and I stopped asking which ones. None of it proved a dramatic betrayal. It didn't have to. It was simple distance repeated until indifference felt normal. After she said it, the room went plain again, light over the sink, traffic distant on Providence Road. She waited for a fight. I didn't give her one. I stacked the plates, ran water, and asked if she was done with her glass. No sarcasm. She said yes, cautious now, unsure of her next move. I dried my hands and said, "All right." She asked if I was upset. I told her I heard her clearly. She said she didn't mean to hurt me. I said I knew. That was the whole conversation. No speeches about fate or finding herself. She watched me for the old pattern. Me smoothing everything over, proving I was safe to lean on. I didn't smooth anything. She turned her phone over, checked a notification, then set it face down again, careful not to meet my eyes. When she went upstairs for a shower, I sat in the quiet and made a short list in my head. Not revenge, just boundaries. I would stop the extra things that depended on my devotion. The reminders, the small treats, the constant initiation. I would stop cushioning her choices with my effort. I would let the life she asked for arrive plainly, without my hands holding it together. The plan felt simple and clean, and in that simplicity I felt lighter. We went to bed without commentary, no reaching for her shoulder. The ceiling fan clicked every fifth turn. I stared at it and let the truth take shape. This wasn't a crisis, it was a decision, hers and now mine. I set my alarm earlier than usual. I didn't lie awake rehearsing arguments I'd never have. Morning came easily. I made 1 cup of coffee, not 2. I ate eggs standing at the counter and wiped it clean. I moved our photo from my lock screen to the archive. I left for work 10 minutes early and drove the long way past the warehouse lot where trailers back in at sunrise. The sky was gray. I didn't feel broken. She had given me a clear request. I would grant her exactly that. The life she wanted without my devotion, delivered calmly, on time, and without complaint. The first week after the talk, the house's temperature changed without the thermostat moving. She left early, came home late, and began to narrate her life in headlines. Team drinks, impromptu happy hour, late yoga. Each phrase was a door closing softly. I didn't chase the door. Tuesday she said she'd be home by 10. At 12:41 a.m. the chain rattled and she slipped in whispering into her phone, surprised I was awake. I wasn't waiting. I was reading. I asked one question evenly. What time should I expect you next time? She didn't answer, just said she lost track. I nodded and set my book down. Okay. She started guarding small things. The phone stayed face down, notifications began to whisper, the shared calendar stopped updating. I didn't demand access back. I set my own calendar. Gym at 6, an extra shift with the warehouse team Thursday night, lunch with Devon on Friday. My days filled quickly when I removed monitoring someone else's mood from the to-do list. The next Saturday she floated a comparison at breakfast like bait. Maya and Josh took a break and came back stronger. I buttered toast and asked, "Is that where you're heading?" She shrugged. Non-committal. I set down the knife. If you want a break, say the words you mean. She blinked, waiting for me to soften it, then switched the subject to a coworker's dog. I let the subject change but kept my answer. Clarity only. Sunday dinner with my parents went on as normal. We drove separately, sat through roast and weather talk, and left without a scene. In the driveway afterward she asked if I was going to sulk. No, I said. I accept what you said. The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was accurate. She tried minor provocations to measure me, moving my jacket from the hall hook to a closet and watching to see if I'd notice, pointing out a text from a male coworker and waiting for a reaction. I offered none beyond factual sentences. Cool. Got it. The absence of friction removed her favorite metric. Without pushback, there was nothing for her to position herself against. Midweek I asked the only 2 direct questions I'd planned to ask in the kitchen while the kettle warmed. What's actually going on? And is there someone else? I said them levelly, hands still. She stared at the steam and answered, I don't know. I just need to feel more. On the second question she bristled. No, I believed the part that mattered. Her uncertainty was real. It didn't change my response. Since she wanted emotional autonomy, I returned all the space she claimed and took some of my own. I stopped texting check-ins during her evenings out. I stopped arranging plans that could be declined. If she asked what I was doing on Friday, I told her plainly, gym, then dinner with Devon at Langvan, then early bed. She looked almost offended by how little drama there was to process. The bed grew wider, not from fighting but because we didn't fight. She lay on her edge scrolling while I read dispatch summaries or worked through a quiet pilot proposal. One night she asked if I was ever going to bring up the talk again. I told her we already had it. You said you care but aren't crazy with me. I heard you. She exhaled like she'd been holding a long note and finally ran out of air. I started to see my own patterns with embarrassing clarity. Surprise coffee on her desk, playlists I built for her commute, long chats I initiated after rough days. Good things, all of them, that had become cushions preventing us from feeling the floor. I removed the cushions not to punish but to see what remained when support stopped disguising emptiness. When she realized I wasn't going to play the penitent husband, she tried the, "Are you really okay with this?" test. We were folding laundry, the most neutral ground in our marriage. I said, "More than okay." It wasn't a line. It was a diagnosis. I functioned better in truth than in hope. She set a towel down and looked at me as if I'd slipped out of a box she'd labeled for me. Her friend surfaced. I noticed new names on her call log when she finally set the phone screen up at brunch. Britt, Asha, names I'd heard in stories about finding yourself. That night, she mentioned a women's night on Friday and watched to see if I'd object. Enjoy, I said. I had a squash match at the Y. The look she gave told me the evening she'd planned needed my resistance to feel fun. The next Thursday I beat her home and found a post-it on the fridge. Late, don't wait up. I ate, cleaned, and set a single plate to dry. On the counter I left a short note. Groceries ordered. Car service Saturday. Your dry cleaning is ready. Not a flex, just the baseline I maintained for myself. Devotion used to be the soundtrack to those tasks. Now they were silent, efficient, and mine. She tried another tack. Concern dressed as accusation. You seem detached. I said I was. She asked if I still loved her. Yes, I said, but I won't subsidize disrespect with effort. No raised voice. The sentence landed on tile and stayed there. She didn't pick it up. Neither did I. We went to bed early and slept like co-workers after a long shift. By the end of the second week, the pressure looped back onto her. The house reflected exactly what she'd asked for. Care without devotion, civility without pursuit. She wanted to know where the heat had gone now that I'd stopped supplying it. I was standing in that heat, a life governed by clarity, not longing. I wasn't waiting to see what she'd choose. The decision showed up in all the small places where I used to overperform. I stopped initiating check-ins, stopped filling the quiet with plans, stopped cushioning her distance with effort. My calendar stayed full, but with my own choices. 6 a.m. gym, a ride-along with a night-due crew, an hour each night to read. Not a protest, a reset. I withdrew the habit of playing both sides of the relationship by myself. I separated routines without drama. I made my own grocery list and claimed one shelf in the fridge. I did laundry on Wednesdays and folded it in the spare room with the door closed. The shared calendar stayed blank. I built my own. No more automatic reservations, no birthday reminders to her sister. No, did you remember? Texts. I moved a framed photo from the hallway into a storage box and slid it under the guest bed, not to erase history but to stop curating it. I took back space in the house with practical steps. The spare room became an office again. Laptop, whiteboard, dispatch charts, a door I actually closed. I charged my phone there at night, not on the nightstand we once shared. I slept well and woke rested. When she asked if I'd always be this distant, I told her I'd always be this honest. She heard the difference. One is punishment, the other precision. Work claimed more of me, but not in the desperate way it had during our rough months. I volunteered to lead a pilot for cross-dock slotting and spent 2 evenings mapping flow with the forklift leads. I started hitting the squat rack regularly and took a Saturday squash slot at the Y with Devon. I put numbers to things I could control: tonnage moved per hour, 5K time, bench reps. My days filled with measurable progress and my head felt clear. Money wasn't a weapon. I didn't lock accounts or freeze cards. I simply stopped underwriting extras that depended on my devotion. Streaming services I never used went to her card or were canceled. Weekly flowers I'd ordered out of habit ended. I kept paying the mortgage and utilities on time. Boundaries, not punishments. When she asked why the wellness box didn't arrive, I said it wasn't mine to manage anymore. The mail was lighter without subscriptions meant to display closeness. She tested the new ground. One evening she came home in a dress I used to compliment and watched for my reaction. I said she looked nice and went back to finishing a doc schedule. Later she sat closer on the couch, a hand on my shoulder, waiting for the spark that used to flow through me. I told her I was turning in early. Not cold, just clear. If I'm not enough when I'm steady, I won't perform on demand. I stopped engaging in the little arguments I used to attend. If she said I'd been quiet lately, I agreed. If she said she didn't recognize me, I told her we were finally meeting without the buffer of my constant effort. She mentioned counseling as a concept, not a plan. I told her I'd show up for anything we both entered seriously. She nodded but didn't book it. I didn't book it for her. The weight of initiating finally rested where it belonged. I reconnected with people who know me outside husband duties. Devon and I added a midweek lunch. I answered my brother's text the same day, and I visited my parents without trying to sell them on an image of us. When my mother asked if everything was okay, I said yes, because for me it was. I wasn't trying to hide problems anymore. I wanted to see them clearly and act accordingly. Quietly, I put a few contingencies in place. I toured a 1-bedroom downtown and let the leasing office know I might call. I updated my emergency contacts at work to list my brother first. I opened a box near the terminal, so sensitive mail wouldn't land on a kitchen counter we barely used together. If she asked what I was doing Thursday at lunch and I said I was looking at an apartment, she stared, surprised. I said it plainly. The next test came on a Saturday we used to mark for us. She mentioned grabbing brunch and maybe checking out a new gallery. Old me would have grabbed a jacket and made a day of it, then pretended the good hours solved the bad. That night she kept the conversation short, exactly like I'd asked. She told me she hadn't meant to hurt me, that she did care, and that she missed the way I used to show up. I listened and then asked the single question that mattered. Did she want me? Not the systems I built, not the routines, but me. She looked down at the table and said, "I don't know." That was the blunt truth I needed. I told her that devotion without desire was finished. Respect is not up for debate in our house anymore. If she wanted this marriage, she'd have to say so plainly and live it every day. No tests, no friend committees. Until then, I'd stop pouring heat into a room someone kept propping open to the cold. The plan was practical. I'd move into the one-bedroom on Church Street I'd already seen. The lease started next week. I'd keep paying my half of the mortgage through the end of the month and take my name off the shared card I never used. Utilities could stay while she figured out the townhouse. She asked if leaving meant I'd given up. I told her I'd stopped pretending. Walking out wasn't punishment. It was alignment. "I care about you, but I'm not crazy with you," had defined our marriage the moment it was said. I chose to live where the words in the room matched the actions in it. We divided the immediate things without ceremony. I packed my clothes, my tools, my laptop, my books, and the framed photo of my parents on their porch. I left the furniture, the dishes, the art we'd bought together. The spare key and the garage fob went on the counter next to the plumber's card. I wiped the whiteboard clean and shut the office door. She mentioned counseling again. I said I'd go if she could begin with a sentence stronger than, "I care." I needed her to say, "I want you," and then follow it with consistent effort. She couldn't say it. I didn't fill it in for her. We stood in the kitchen like colleagues finishing a shift, acknowledging the job was done. I slept on the couch that last night and set my alarm for 5. In the morning I made coffee for 1, loaded 2 suitcases and a toolbox into the truck, and checked the mailbox one last time. She came down in a robe, her eyes swollen, and asked if there was anything else to say. "Thank you for being honest," I told her. "I'm going to live honestly, too." The new apartment was small, clean, and quiet. I set up a foldable desk, a bed frame, and a single shelf. I bought a basic set of plates and a cheap rug that fit the living room better than we'd fit together over the last 3 months. I put my phone charger on the kitchen counter and cooked eggs at 7:10 like it was any Tuesday. Simplicity felt like air. I called my parents that afternoon and told them the status. My mother asked if there was a chance. I said not on the terms we had. My father asked if I needed anything. I said I had plenty and meant it. I wasn't trying to win anything back. At work I updated HR with my new address, reordered emergency contacts, and confirmed beneficiaries. I added a note to my team's SOP. We don't chase unclear requests. Personal rule, professional rule. Same standard. Respect is the system. Everything else is noise. She texted the first weekend. "I miss you." I replied once. "I won't return to being tolerated." She asked if we could grab coffee. I said I was available for paperwork or logistics, and anything else would require the one thing I asked for on day 1. No reply came. That silence did what 100 arguments never could. Her sister called, fishing for a middle ground. I gave the same answer I'd given everyone. I'm calm, I'm not angry, and I'm done negotiating against myself. If she chooses a marriage grounded in respect, we can talk. Otherwise, I wish her well. No gossip, no inventory. I refused to play the villain in a story I wasn't writing anymore. The first Friday alone I hiked before sunrise and beat my best time up the trail. I ate diner breakfast at the counter and paid in cash. Back at the apartment I hung a small whiteboard by the door and wrote 3 words across the top. Clear, kind, final. It wasn't a mantra so much as a filter. Every message and plan would pass through it. A letter from a lawyer arrived for her at my P.O. box by mistake. Some condo association thing. I scanned it, forwarded the file, and left the original at her door with no note. She texted, "Thank you." I left it on read. Politeness doesn't equal openness. Boundaries don't need exclamation points to work. One quiet Sunday I drove past the townhouse on the way to the gym. The porch light was on and a watering plan sat on the steps. I felt nothing dramatic. Not grief. Just a simple recognition that the life inside that house required a version of me I was done performing. I turned left at the light and kept driving. The following week I met with a lawyer to understand next steps if we decided to formalize a split. No deadlines, just information about equitable division, timelines, and documents. I made a folder labeled, "If needed," and closed it. Prepared is not the same as eager. I wasn't rushing toward an ending. I was standing in one that had already happened. A month later she reached out again. I think I was wrong. I read it twice and waited a day before replying with a single line. If you want me, say it and live it consistently. The thread went quiet. Sometimes the simplest conditions are the hardest to meet. Life narrowed and improved. Work, training, errands, calls with my brother, the occasional game with Devon. No grand gestures. The absence of confusion became the day's best part. I slept through the night and woke before my alarm. I stopped rehearsing imaginary conversations I didn't need. If she ever shows up with the right sentence and matching actions, I'll listen with a steady head. If she doesn't, I'm already where I need to be. The rule stands. Respect is non-negotiable. I will not build warmth for someone standing in the doorway. I will build a life where the door is closed, the room is mine, and the person inside chooses to be there. She made a choice and I made mine. No revenge. Just a man who heard what was said across a kitchen table and answered it with a clean line. I refuse to lose myself again. That's the whole story. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.